Hello, everybody. It's Laura Eisenhower. I am joined today by Simon Parks. I know so many of you are familiar with him from Connecting Consciousness, the community network, his website, Connecting Consciousness, I believe it's .com, and then simonparks.com. And you have quite the background, and you've been exposing all sorts of stuff for so long. And just to hear it from your own words, tell us about your background and
Bless you.
yeah. And thank you so much
Okay,
for
well,
being with me today.
first of all, it's lovely to see you. Thanks. We've always got on. Thank you for inviting me back. Just for the record, it's simonparks.org.
Oh,
Simonparks.org.
gotcha.
Okay.
Oops.
Right. So I think you've probably been going the same or longer than I have, really. I sort of started in the fall of 2009. That's when I started to do my broadcasts and speak out. And initially, what really prompted me, Laura, was my interactions both with the British intelligence services and through them the American intelligence services and non-human entities. I don't just refer to them as ETs. I refer to them as, extra-dimensional beings or interdimensional beings. And so that's really, I think, how I hit the scene, shall we say. But I soon realized that that's all great, but it doesn't actually empower humanity, because I originally wanted to reach out to people, Laura, and say, hey, if you're having these really weird experiences, you're not alone. So that was what I was trying to do. And then, of course, it became a larger debate, really, in terms of what the heck was going on in the world, in terms of America, but not just America. And so I created Connecting Consciousness initially as an organization that connect people together, people who are like-minded. But it's really now grown into a worldwide organization. And we're very blessed that the White Hats are supporting it and are behind it. So, yeah, I mean, maybe my bit of background will come out during our talk. I don't want to go into any huge more detail on that.
Oh, that's awesome. So, the White Hats, I've heard that they are a bit undercover as far as like they might have been compromised along the way, but then they shifted over and they're kind of running operations like behind the scene. I mean, it's what they're doing and who they are. A lot of people are curious about. I don't know how much you can share about that, or if you want to validate what I just said. But it would seem that they are operating within maybe deep state in order to take it down from the inside. Is that something you're able to speak on, or is that even accurate?
No. Well, I mean, we can get onto the Maui situation because a lot of questions have been raised about that and the role of the
Right.
White Hats. We can deal with that separately. Let me just answer you best I can directly. The White Hats have never been compromised. The White Hats don't operate acknowledged in the deep state. They do have agents planted in the deep state, just as the deep state have agents planted within the White Hats. But I have to say that the White Hats, to my knowledge, have been better ferreting out or rooting out the bad guys. And the bad guys who are a bit more amorphous, they're more fractured now. They're not as good at their own housekeeping. And so the White Hats have been at this quite a while in terms of trying to get a grip on the situation. Not as long as the baddies. The baddies have been doing it for thousands of years. But ever since Lincoln, really, President Lincoln, and much more recently, 1963, the murder of the president, that really was the turning point. So no, the White Hats are clearly operating behind the scenes. They're predominantly United States Navy. You always hear about the Marines. It's just that the Marines are the go-to guys. And if anybody wonders why that is it just go on Google and try and look at some of the Marines, not just in Hawaii but anywhere, having a church, a religious sing, and you appreciate that if you're fighting the devil, and the devil is real, evil is real, you have to have something to counterbalance it. So the army, the air force are great, but they don't have that commitment in the same way that the Marines have. And that's why the Marines are the go-to guys, because they are harder to corrupt than the regular armed forces.
I've heard that. Wow. Yeah, I heard Eisenhower set up the USMC Special Section, United States Marine Corps, a special section having to do with some of the off-planet stuff too. I don't know how much you know about that, but we can always
Well,
circle
well
back.
ever since Forrestal was pushed out of the hospital window,
Yeah.
and before that, the Navy had a really important role. And what happened was that, and all our audiences have to do is go and watch Star Trek, because Star Trek refer to them as ships. And the Navy realized after the Second World War, as did the American military, that in order to project the United States power on this planet, they needed aircraft carriers. And so therefore the task force groups became really important. And the Navy then began to elbow its way into the decision-making or the intelligence networks. And also the Navy in the early days were very involved in crash. That's one of the reasons that Forrestal had a nervous breakdown and was murdered. And therefore the Navy never looked back. And when the CIA tried to stop the Navy went and worked with other non-human entities in contravention of some of the instructions they got from Washington, but the Navy went and did their own thing. So that is why, of course, the Navy section in the Pentagon was hit by a missile, because not just the records were kept there, but the Navy's units were there. So the Navy's always been the good guy.
So take us into this recent, like, Maui fires and directed energy weapons. I think some people are feeling like, how is this still continuing? How is this not being stopped? Clearly, I mean, directed energy weapons, and children are missing, and barriers are being put around. People weren't even allowed to leave, and the handling of it all just seems to be just, showing like a land grab, and things happening in Canada, and the ability for them to report news is being shut down, and supposedly entrainment camps or re-education camps are already being established. I mean, talk to us about that, and where are we with that, and is this something that they're obviously going to attempt to do, but them getting away with it is pretty unlikely? Do you think this event was enough to wake the masses up to what's really going on?
It wasn't designed for that. I know there are an awful lot of commentators out there who were saying, "Oh, this was, an event that would wake people up." I understand why, some of the other commentators, not yourself. I'm talking about some American and some British commentators, but no disrespect to them. If they're not in the game, they're not actually going to really know what's going on. So let me put my view, and then we can just take it from there. Well, first of all, the deep state do not have control of any space-based directed energy weapons. They do not have the satellite technology anymore to do that. What they did use in the Hawaiian Islands was a mobile energy weapon. So it's on a truck. They had that. What they also had was a lot of what the military, the Pentagon 5 wall told me was accelerant. That means petrol, gasoline. And so what they simply did was they had teams out there who were looking at the prevailing winds. They just literally put the petrol down, let the winds do it, and then went in. When most of the people had been evacuated before the fires hit, they then went in with a mobile energy beam weapon. So they had a mobile weapon. They do not have space ones. The reason for the attack there, two reasons. One, Space Force has a small facility, command and control, and records actually based on the island. It will do, because it's the huge base for the United States Navy, and the Marines are very strong there. Secondly, there were a number of tunnels that were existing where a number of child trafficking operations had been undergone, and the White Hats, through the Marines and Delta Force, were actually, or had made an effort there. So the real attack was against Space Force, and against the good guys working out, trying to liberate kids and undo these facilities. The secondary aspect of that was, as I'm sure you know, Hawaii, the royal sovereign, the royal kingdom of Hawaii, has asked to leave the United States, and that has been agreed, and it will leave and be its own sovereign kingdom. And the deep state didn't like that. So that is why the royal areas were attacked, the native areas were attacked, simply because they wanted, the deep state wanted to hit back at the core support from the royal families to leave the United States. So it wasn't anything to do with Ofra Whitney or any of these other people or any of that. That's, you know, that's not what's going on here. What's going on is a war between the bad guys who wanted to attack Space Force operational, just as the missile was fired. We talked about this before we came on air. Just as the missile was fired at the Pentagon to hit the United States Navy section of the Pentagon, so this attack by the deep state was made against United States naval assets, shall we say. The difficulty is that, and I'm not going to start talking about FEMA or anything else. What I will say is there was a group who were not taking orders from the United States military, and they did lock the roads down. They did prevent people getting about and escaping. There have been clashes between Marines and I can't say who they are, but I'll just say other actors. There's been firefights. And of course, it's a Marine base. So the Marines had a very large number of guys on the ground, much more than the other side had. But please let your audience know that the Marines had been operating undercover before it became obvious. So it's not a wake-up call to the good guys. The good guys began to suspect something about 2 weeks beforehand. They weren't sure where the attack was coming from, Laura, and that's why they began to pull out from their facility. They began to get out of there, but they weren't sure. And one of the main reasons that the good guys pulled out from their facility was that they thought, wrongly as it turned out, but they thought that if they vacated that facility, the bad guys wouldn't attack and there wouldn't be collateral damage. In other words, the good guys thought if we pull out, the bad guys won't attack and it won't put civilians in danger. As it turned out, the bad guys attacked anyway. So that's the stuff that's not being reported.
Wow, right.
So that's where we are with it.
Right. Yeah. So much speculation, just people just trying to, figure it out. But then there's this whole like people like Oprah and some of these more wealthy individuals, like a land grab type deal, them getting property and putting these blue roofs on their houses. Do you know anything about what that is?
Yeah. Look, you can direct a weapon, energy weapon, but fire doesn't differentiate between a blue roof and a red roof. Fire will consume whatever. But yeah, if you're aiming, you could aim your weapon at what have you. So this is where we now go into the realm of propaganda and politics. Both sides are playing propaganda and politics. And what I would really want to try and get across to all of the audiences who are awake and aware is that the vast majority, 99.9% of news on the mainstream is not for you guys. It's aimed at the sleepers, the I can't say brain dead, but the people who just haven't got it. But also 75% of the news coming out on social media is also not aimed at logical, clear thinking people. It's almost crazy news. It's aimed at either making people fearful or making them want to take a gun and go and shoot somebody. And so really we're looking for the middle ground. We're looking to obtain the truth. And this hot-headed response that some commentators are putting out doesn't help the military.
Right. So, but people are talking about like they're going to start doing the mandates again. They're going to start making people wear masks again. And
No, they're not.
yeah, like what are we in for though? What do you think?
No, nothing. Um, Look, the best way to frighten people is to say, you've got to eat insects because insects are high in protein and we're going to take all the beef off your counter. Or think about the last time we had a lockdown situation. We couldn't get, I don't know what you call them in the United States of America. We call them toilet rolls. What do you call them? Toilet rolls, loo rolls? What do
Toilet
you call them?
paper. Toilet
Toilet
paper.
paper. Okay. Well, there was a shortage of that. Does anybody really think that there was a shortage of that? Of course there wasn't. It was an artificially created shortage. Both sides were and are playing for the minds and hearts, not for you and I and the audience, but for the people who are unawake and unaware. So the best way to frighten people and to shake them out of their lethargy is to say, you're going back to another lockdown, you're doing this, you're doing that. Um, it's a bit like saying the stock market's going to crash, or there's going to be an EBS, or the banks are going to crash. All of these stories are generated by one side or the other, for no other reason than just propaganda. So no, I'm not overly concerned about lockdowns or any new viruses, etc.
So that's just just people just talking. I mean, there's just a lot of things, kind of being spread. I mean, do you feel the last time that happened? I mean, so many areas of the world, dropped all the mandates. I mean, it's easier to fly and I mean, it just seems so basically you're saying that a greater awakening and understanding of what's really going on is going to override any attempt to get away with doing too much more of what we've been seeing. Um, is that kind of what you're saying? It's just
No, no, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that basically governments receive instructions from one side and then from another side. For instance, say a government will attend a meeting, and they'll attend a meeting with 3 or 4 heads of state, and they'll have a discussion, etc. And then what happens is a guy from President Trump turns up the next day and says, "Okay, well, you can do this and this and this, but you can't do that." So it's probably really interesting for the White Hats to say, let's let the deep state run with an agenda about masks and locking people in, etc., because what that does is it will force the public to think, here we go again, and what are you going to do about it? So I've always said that there's a desk somewhere in the Pentagon, and somebody generates news stories for the mainstream media and for social media, and the deep state has a desk, and they generate news stories for the mainstream media and the social media. Now, I made it very clear. Put the dog down. I made it very clear that I was not going to be used by the White Hats to put out disinformation. I actually said that I think personally running a spiritual organization as I do, it would be wrong and it wouldn't be compatible with that. So I will only give out intel that I believe to be true. Most commentators, to be honest with you, Laura, they know full well that the stories they're pushing out are lies, but they're doing it because the White Hats have asked them, and from a patriotic or a constitutional point of view, they think, yeah, that's right, I've got to go with this. Now, I think that's wrong because I think that the human race deserves the truth, and I think that from my personal point of view, I'm not prepared to play that game. So I won't put out, that's why I've not talked about masks, I've not talked about lockdowns, I've not talked about bank crashes, I've not talked about stock exchange crashes or EBS for that matter, because that is for other people who have a different agenda to me. They don't have an organization of 100,000 people who look to them for the truth. They have an audience, some have millions of audience, but they're not committed necessarily to a spiritual path. They will just flip from one commentator to the next. All they're interested in is in intel. And the more um, exciting it is, or the more violent it is, then they're not interested in that. So we're very different in terms of me. I know you're the same as me, but we're very different in terms of my organization will not push around a lot of nonsense out there. So that's why people have asked me, why don't you talk about this or that? And I said, because it's not true. It's not true.
Gosh, yeah. No, I really loved that about the last roundtable that we did, and you expressing that. Yeah, that's why do you think the White Hats want that to be shared, just to stir people up, to get them to think and hopefully break through it, even though we are both in agreement that is that really a good tactic? I mean, is that just it's for some but not all, and you're not adhering to the ones that might benefit from an opposing catalyst or a bit of, it just seems like it's a tactic for a certain psychology to maybe be able to work with, but it's not truth, right? So I mean, what is their reasoning then?
Yeah, well, that's the big question. What's the point of it? And the point is that this information is not designed for the audience. It's designed for the deep state. You see, if they think that the stock market is going to be crashed on the 15th of September, the deep state will go into an absolute panic and do this and the other. If the deep state think there's an EBS on a certain date, the deep state panic. So all of these are not there for the audience. The audience pick it up and run with it and get terribly excited. I would really say, if anyone's got any time, please go and research the Second World War and look particularly how the Americans, in the latter part of the war, 1944 onwards, were putting out stories, and the Brits were doing it as well, which were totally insane, but were literally just aimed at the Third Reich, just aimed at Hitler and all the rest of it. So it's a well-tried process. The problem is that people who quite rightly are not interested in the mainstream, they will be drawn to a lot of this, and unfortunately they will pick up on the sites that are the loudest or the most daring, and they're not always the most truthful. For instance, there was an attack on Guantanamo Bay, Gitmo, but the stories that made it through, like, I won't mention the sites or I'll get in trouble, but they were embellished. They weren't accurate. There was also an attack on an armored car by the good guys. And so there are true stories, but they are changed out of all intent and purposes. So it is just have to be careful. The more crazy it sounds, the less likely it's real.
But that's the White Hats that are involved in that.
They're both doing it. They're both doing it. Both
Right.
sides are doing it. Yeah.
But the White Hats are definitely on our side.
Well, I think remember the Nashville last few months of President Trump's official position. There was a big explosion in Nashville. I think it was Christmas Eve or Christmas Day. I think it was Nashville, and there was only one person killed in that explosion. That was a directed energy weapon attack. That person was already dead. The White Hats had executed that person beforehand. Whenever the White Hats are involved, civilians do not die. Whenever the bad guys do it, there's always excess death. When the Georgia Guidestones were taken down by a directed energy weapon, nobody was killed, and the next morning all the trucks were there to knock it all down. So it should have been obvious to everyone back then that the White Hats were in control of these energy weapons. These are space-based weapons. The deep state do not have space-based weapons, but they do have ground-based weapons. My mother in 1977 on her secret with the National Security Agency and British intelligence MI5, she was working on like a Humvee vehicle with an energy weapon fixed on the top of it. And the problem was, how do you power it? And so back in those days, they were working on enormous power packs. Now, of course, they're really small. They haven't got them readily available as say a rifle, but they are readily available on a pickup truck or something small like that.
Right. Gotcha. So it seems white hats, when it comes to the information that's put out, they're not completely being 100% truthful, but it's both sides. So one might be feeding the other. Maybe there's some that are confused as far as the ones that interact more with humans or humanity.
Yeah, white hats are always truthful, but what white hats have to do is to sometimes hide the truth. Because if you're playing a game with somebody, whether it's Monopoly or
Poker
Scrabble
face.
or any of those games, you can't really start showing even the people behind you what your cards are, because you don't know who's standing behind you. So the white hats are always truthful, but what they will do is not offer that truth if to do so would put lives in danger.
Gotcha. Yeah. So when it comes to like Trump's arrest and the mugshot and the upcoming election, I think we touched upon it a little bit. I don't know if you are willing to go there. What are we seeing on sort of the world theater stage that is not exactly what it looks like when it comes to this administration, his arrest, and then maybe we can talk about possible fake alien invasion. Anything you want to share about that? Because that's going
Sure.
around, and it
Mm,
doesn't look that real to me, but that's just me.
sure. Well, there's more than one story. There's continental United States. There's Africa, that's got its own agenda. To a lesser extent, there's Europe. So they all compartmentalized, and you'll understand that from Operation Paperclip. So all of these actions are compartmentalized. So we did take America on its own, separate from what's happening in the world. And I never have yet been to jail and had my mugshot taken, but there have been countless people that have. And you would give $100 to get a mugshot like the mugshot the president got. Now, anybody who thinks that that was taken in the jail is not on the same page as me. That was taken professionally, and it was digitally enhanced, and they had the t-shirts ready to go. They had all the merchandise ready to go. And what it's to do, because Brits won't get it, Europeans won't get it. Now, I'm not an American, but I've studied as much as I can. It's going back to the Minutemen. It's going back to 1776 and the Constitution. It's designed to show determination and a fight. That's what that face was about. And anybody thinks you could get a mugshot like that is crazy. Now, I know it. I was sent it privately, separately, the mugshots of all the other defendants, and then it did leak out onto the internet. And there are two people there who are laughing at the photograph. If anybody can tell me that you would go into Fulton County or anywhere else and laugh while the police are taking a mugshot. Again, this wasn't done in a police station. This was done in a studio. And they were told to laugh. The guys were told, do your Trump face, do the 1776 we're fighting face. And the women were just laughed. So it's a sign. But of course, unfortunately, most of the unawake and unaware people are so bloody stupid, excuse me, to pick it up. So all of that is just one long joke, not aimed at you or me or our audience, but aimed at the people who still think airplanes crashed into the Twin Towers. That's who it's all aimed at. So, one person said to me, "Oh, you must be worried that Trump's been arrested." And I said, "Are you joking?" I said, "Bring it on. We're not at all concerned. It's exactly what was planned and what needs to happen."
With the outcome being what?
Well, I think they've got more than one outcome planned. The reality is, all of this, from a white hat perspective, is to show enough people that the old ways don't work anymore. The governments are not there for you; they are only there for themselves, and the system is broken. So that the more the public are faced with a broken system, the more they will embrace an alternative. So when the RV takes place and we have enormous humanitarian projects rolled out, people will be offered a choice of a way to live, one that is closer to God, one that is closer to the Constitution, no matter what country you're in, or the old ways. And, if you stop rewarding evildoers and you only reward good work, you educate the public over time. So it's not a quick fix. It's shock and awe tactics now, and then a 10-year educational program so that people can move to a much more God-fearing way of life, valuing humanity, valuing life, valuing truth, and moving away from some of the entertainment industry's values that have been pushed down people's throats.
Right. So theater.
I didn't say Hollywood.
Right. The other theater.
Yeah, the other theater.
The players and actors, which kind of come from both sides. I mean, how much does certain levels of the dark side play this role for the sake of a greater awakening? Because there's people talk or the whole hidden hand. We're doing this because we need to reach a certain goal of some kind of harvest in order to, I mean, like we're doing this for your benefit. Like, not all that maybe play on the dark side see it that way, but where does that make any sense when there's trafficking and pedophilia, just all this deeper underbelly that is just so dark? I mean, what are your thoughts about it just being a part of a larger awakening plan? I mean, that just sounds like it doesn't quite fit, or like something got out of control, and maybe it originally was there to help move us beyond duality and see the polarity of good versus evil, like the tree of knowledge that seems to have been targeted with so much mind control and social engineering that without self-knowledge, where are we restoring the template, really? I mean, how do you look at this? How do you perceive this from a larger picture level as it's all like playing out right now as a showdown of forces in a way? I mean, ultimately we can really only win the war within ourselves, right? Because it's a war on consciousness. But where is the dark side, like doing it for our benefit? I mean, it seems there's a bit of that, but it's gotten out of control. What are your thoughts?
I don't think the dark side have ever done anything for the benefit of
For the
humanity.
benefit, right? That just seems like such a new age BS or something. I don't know. Okay, so go ahead. What are your thoughts?
This is just simply a war between good and evil, between those that believe in God and those that believe in the devil. And remember, the people that believe in the devil think the devil is their God. So just as you have two presidents at the moment, you have two iconic beings being held up as the leaders of those individual groups who profess to it. So no, this is just literally a cleansing out, burning out of evil, and the being pushed in people's faces. Because as you said quite rightly, you take child trafficking. Most people, unfortunately, imagine child trafficking as a broken down boat with half a sail, 5 kids on it, washing away. They don't realize that some of the largest multinational corporations on the planet are actually involved in it. They would be shocked if they realized the network that existed before President Trump, authorized the Marines and the special forces to take action. So this is just simply a war between good and evil, and evil is being shown. Evil can't be good. That's the point. They can't be good. They can't do anything good because they're evil. And good will only do evil if it's corrupted. That's why it's so important that the Marines and those God-fearing people stay true, because good people do good work. And that's where we are. And humanity's got to choose. Do they want good or do they want evil?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, how could anything evil just be like, well, I'm really good deep down, but I'm just going to do these evil acts it's just utterly absurd. Yeah. Some do, kind of say that it might be a catalyst for a greater awakening, almost like seeing the red flags in an abusive relationship would be a red flag to move on and divorce yourself and not
Yeah, but in that,
unconsciously comply, right?
beg your pardon for interrupting and over
Oh no.
speaking you, but in the scenario you've just put forward, the abuser doesn't do that to alert the victim to his or her intentions. It's just the way they are. They can't help themselves. And in the same way, the deep state is running to a program. It cannot change. It cannot help itself. So it tries to trick people and say, hey, look, you're going to have to cut your carbon emissions. You're going to have to do this, that, and the other. Oh, and by the way, we're going to have another private airplane. So it's literally the magician trying to get people to look in one direction while they do something else. So what the white hats are doing is forcing those actions into the faces of people, and little tricks like Fox News coming out and saying it puts a picture of Biden up and it says the previous president. Oh dear, no, we didn't mean that. They're trying to drop in, and some people just will never get it. They just won't get it. And at the end of the day, there'll be this small group of people, sadly, who just will refuse to move out of their position because they're not big enough to accept that they made a mistake. And they're not big enough to move on and learn. And that group, of course, I don't know how we're going to manage them. But at the moment, our focus is on trying to alert good people to how they've been tricked by the system.
Right. Totally. Totally. And that's like exactly just the approach in my upcoming book is.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Just, appreciating where we all are as souls. But you're going to have, in order to continue on, it's just, don't be afraid to admit you were mistaken, and take those gifts and abilities that you've developed and redirect them away from what wants to use them for these trickery agendas that are problem reaction solution that really prey on well-intentioned people. But the trans agenda is so out of control with what they're doing to kids and messing with their heads. And not to say that it's not legit to, at a certain stage in the game, feel like you want to express more of a masculine or feminine side, regardless of the gender you were born into, but just the forcing it on our kids. And there's that, right? And then the 5G and what people have been putting into their bodies. Is there a way for people to wake up and snap out of the detriments of making those choices? Do you see more being released in order to help mitigate those damages when people are ready to turn themselves around and admit, like, whoa, okay, maybe that wasn't the best thing? Because people are like, med beds and we've already won, and I don't know.
Yeah, I understand why that statement has been made. Unfortunately, it was very condescending, and also trust the plan is very condescending. I've consistently for years said to the military, you're not dealing with military, you're dealing with civilians. You can't say to a group of civilians, do what I tell you, because they won't. So you can't say to a group of civilians, trust the plan, because they'll say, what plan? And they'll question. Soldiers in a line don't question, they do what they're told. And the problem is, in the early days, that the military were using military psychologists to project the battle without really appreciating how civilians would respond. So that's why using Twitter, the White Hats use Twitter a great deal, and other platforms to get the feedback. How are we doing? Has that message come across? And so this is the subtlety of the war. It's not a war of bombs falling from the sky like Germans dropped on London. This is a remarkably different war, and it's got a elastic time frame. In other words, things will happen when certain aspects have been completed. It's no good drawing a piece of paper and a chart and saying we'll have everything done on this date, because that doesn't work like that. So it's awful for people who are not getting the truth from the mainstream. It's awful to have to deal with your own family, your friends who don't believe you, think you're cracked, you're crazy, you're insane. But never mind anything else, we owe it to ourselves to be true to ourselves. And yeah, if you believe in God, you'll find it a lot easier to cut through all of this nonsense that is being put out. And you talked about the transgender aspect. The day will come when we are celebrating a man and a woman in a relationship. That's not to say that other groups can't have a relationship, but it needs to be pushed. We need to reward the system that was created by God. So don't force people to be in a man and woman relationship, but reward them. For instance, if people get married, there should be tax incentive for them. There should be money for it, because the whole point is to bring up some children in as best relationship as you can. Plenty of single mothers and fathers bring up kids in a brilliant way. They need a lot of money. I don't know how people who go through a sex change and then bring up children, I have not yet understood the impact that has on the children, and I'm not qualified enough to talk about that. But I do think that the traditional values that were in the good book are something that we should support and promote without ramming it down people's throats, because we're all being told how a child can be an it or a they. Are you a boy or a girl? No, I'm an it. I want to be referred to as a they. Well, where's that in the biological history? Does an ant or a fly, does a bird, does a cat, a dog, do they think of themselves as an it and a they? This is political construct from communists. I'll say it, from communists who want to destroy the United States of America, and that isn't by a nuclear bomb falling on anywhere. It's by destroying the family, by closing the churches, destroying the family, destroying the values that made America the most important country in the world. And I just hope American people wake up to it.
Right. I mean, like you said, paperclip and all these different MK Ultra projects, geoengineering. I mean, this is like Mengele type science behavior. It's not trust the science. It's actually question it because it's twisted, and it's using, psyops as a way to drop people's vibration and disassociate them from their own soul. Would you say that that's the case, and that the ramifications are leading to maybe what some would consider a genetically modified being that would like what we saw in the Orion Wars, or those beings that have been compromised by a dark agenda that lost their soul matrix? Are we seeing the same tactics being played out in humanity, or is that connected at all?
It's really interesting. Well, Dr. Green, Dr. Black, Dr. White, whatever you want to call Dr. Mengele when he went to the United States, his work has related to some of what we have today, but the vast majority of it is too separate. But yeah, some of that work that he did for those dark organizations has found its way to the modern science. In terms of the agenda, the time frame to take over humanity would take too long. What's been proposed would take far too long. And so it's literally just a straightforward battle of mind, propaganda, literally. In terms of altering people, one of the ways they're testing it out, and I think is which state is it in America, or is it Canada that's allowed it? It's Montreal. Cabs with no driver in there. I can't remember if it's Canada or America that has them, but I think it's Canada. But this is one of the test ways where you put a car out there and say, doesn't need a driver. So you can be a passenger, because it's a way to let humans let go of what makes them special. You see, if you're in an airplane there is a human flying, is a man or a woman flying that airplane. The only time the integrated landing system or the autopilot comes on is when the pilot is on a nice straight path and wants to go and get a cup of coffee. You wouldn't allow an airplane to take off and land without a human being at the control. So why is it okay to have a cab do it? It's because it's aimed at trying to make humans let go of the responsibility of sovereignty and being a human. And my view is, do not ever get into a taxi without a driver in it. Find a guy or a woman who's doing it and pay them the fare and keep them employed. Because for every piece of machinery that comes out there that doesn't have a man or woman on it, that's someone's job gone. So now I'm quite strong about that. And that's the subtle way they're trying to undermine humanity.
Is that sort of depopulation, but enough are left behind to be the ones that are controlled or under sort of this AI robotic sort of new world order structure where they keep some around but wipe out as many as they can to give a reasonable number? I mean, the Georgia Stones got knocked down, but I mean, they're still pushing for what that represented, right? I mean, that's the new world order. Do they know they lost, or they just, it's all theater now? Just, I mean,
well, they're not pushing very hard because they don't have the ability to do it. They can do a lot of talks. They can have these World Economic Forum meetings, and they can say what they're like. They don't have the money to put them into practice anymore. They can't do anything like that. So a lot of it is the deep state puffing themselves up like one of those birds that wants to make itself look really big, frighten off everyone. So they're puffing themselves up. But the reality is that the deep state can only achieve one hit at a time. What the white hats can do is achieve a number of hits simultaneously at a time, because the deep state do not control the United States military. End of story. They don't have that. And they always counted on the fact that the white hats would never use the military against them. But that changed, and now the military has been used for a number of years now against them. And therefore, the deep state has to go into the propaganda side, the news real side. It doesn't have the in your face. And what we saw for the first time was in Hawaii and the islands was an attempt to draw the white hats into a full braced war, which the white hats were not going to be drawn into. The number of times that the assassination attempt has been done on President Trump in the hope that he will lash out and do something. The number of times that Putin tried to kill Putin in the hope that he will start a third world war. That's about the level at which the deep state is at now. It's not at the level it was when Obama was president. And even then, they didn't go for the depopulation agenda in a 10-year way, because they didn't have the control of the military. Ever since the 60s, the military has kicked back against the deep state in America. So, one day I hope the books will show just how much the American citizens really owe to the loyalty of the men and women that serve the United States.
Wow. Yeah. My goodness. That's, really wild that that's really all they've got. I mean, though the military and the manipulations, I mean, that must have ceased, implanting how there's a ET or negative alien agenda targeting military, or that seems to have subsided, you're saying. And because that was, I mean, how linked is that to like secret space programs? I mean, that where are we in that larger picture?
Well, remember, it was President Trump that announced the Space Force. So it was Trump that went to the American public and the world and said it's the next arm of our military, and made it official, and it has its own badge. And do you remember, people were asked to design the Space Force patch? Remember that? And one was chosen and won. So that was literally saying to the deep state, the whole point of that was, we're now going to use this against you. Because if it was hidden, then they had to be very careful. Oh, look, we've seen that strange aircraft up over Nevada. But now it's quite clear that things that would occur, and the American government say, well, that's secret, that's Space Force. So on one hand, we've got the public being got ready for the fact that there is an interest in space, but that's a completely different throw of the dice to saying that we have valid craft that can travel to many planets within the solar system that are 24/7 up there. And we are in conversation with a number of other alien entities, and we are at war from time to time with rogue alien craft that attempt to come through the cordon. So public aren't ready for that. But the battle at the moment is between Space Force and the technology it has and the deep state.
Deep state with their hands on the technologies that were part of the ET government trades that took place. I mean, Eisenhower gets so much blame, but this happened before him. And I know we talked about it last time in the conversation, but so it'd be the war between the deep state dark technologies and Space Force. Is that linked to like the White Hats Earth Alliance or the positive military on a space level that has been able to sort of protect us from more dark nefarious forces coming in? Is that true about almost like a barrier being put in place to allow these positive military forces to build to deal with what the infiltration has already been without it getting worse? It's like it's almost like being contained and cornered, maybe? Or how would you kind of explain that?
The taking down of the Vatican was pivotal in answer to your question, because let's go back to a small concept of the Maui fires, that anything with a blue color seemed not to have been burnt down. Frequency is very important, and some of the dark night, it's KNIGHT, dark night satellites operated by the Vatican were able to activate individuals on Earth who had a demonic possession or a demonic entity to them, and operated within a certain frequency. So if you have a transmitter, call it whatever you like, could be a church, I don't mean a Christian church, could be a church, it could be whatever, that pumps out a certain frequency, which we would consider very low vibe, that can be weaponized and used. And so what the White Hats had to do was a lot of stuff behind the scenes, which was to take down the ability for certain individuals, human and non-human, to be able to move from one country to another, other than in an aeroplane or a boat. Portals, some of the technology that is available is quite exciting, and neither the bad side nor the good side want to bring that out to the public's attention at the moment. But and what I'm interjecting here is that we mustn't just think about hardware. We must also think about frequency and energy, and how you can weaponize certain forms of energy. You know, ancient history here, the Colosseum in Rome, where the gladiators would kill each other, or where the Circus Maximus, where the Roman chariots, the reds and the greens, would chase. A lot of negative entities would literally hover amongst the audience and feed off that energy. The number of people who've been to bad churches and seen a dark force literally sucking out the energy from a congregation that was a satanic congregation. And so that's a concept that public have not had experience of. They've not shown it. So it's not just about, the best technology or back engineered technology. It's about, for instance, people have no concept of how crystals, they don't value them. For instance, we think about a crystal as the early laser beam, or in a quartz watch, the crystal beat. But what they don't realize is in many fourth dimensional spacecraft. The antenna array, which would be a pulse radar in a modern aircraft, is actually a crystal set. It's crystals. Now, there's so much that hasn't been released to the public, but needs to be, but only when the bad guys have had their ass kicked.
Right. Right. I mean, we have to get to a certain level of consciousness as a biological technology that is more advanced, that has just got so much of itself in dormancy, that we have to be conscious enough and ready to handle weaponized or inversions versus progression on a more organic unfolding of what I feel these planetary alignments and what the Earth body is assisting us in, and it's encoded in us as being a part of you know, a resolution of how that has impacted the planetary grid network, and almost through osmosis people pick up on that, and how that has kept us a bit scrambled. But is that kind of what you're saying, is that, I mean, besides
100%.
technology, it's manipulating the energies of us in order to infect our creative channels to enable the very things we don't want. So if we know what's playing behind the scenes, that would maybe stunt our growth in looking for technology to save the day, rather than us taking it upon ourselves to be the advanced technology. Or what do you think?
I partly agree with that. I think it's just that they, rightly or wrongly, the good guys just don't think that people are capable of having all the truth given to them on a Friday morning. And so, unfortunately, in many ways, the good guys are correct, because they have been let down by a lot of people. In other words, it wasn't the military that let the system in America come to this. It was many, many millions of good American people who said, hey, I haven't got time to be involved in politics. I haven't got time to look at the school board. I haven't got time for this. I'm too busy paying my taxes or my rent or my mortgage, and I want to watch the game on television. And as a result of it, the evil boys, the bad boys, over many years got in and literally took control of the United States of America infrastructure, except for the military. And so the military is saying, listen, we're going to have to get you civilians out of this mess. So you're going to play it our way. And it isn't going to be done the civilian way. It isn't going to be nice. We aren't going to sit down with you and tell you every step of the way what we're going to do. We're going to do it the way we do, because frankly, we don't really trust you, because you're the ones that brought it here. Now, and if you think we are going to just hand you all back this authority without proper education, that's not going to happen. In other words, why would you clear all the evil off the planet, walk away, and let the same people bring that evil back? So there has to be a long-term operation once the bad guys have been removed, to ensure that people never again allow the devil, for want of a better word, to come back into their lives, their children's lives, and the lives of their country. So that's why we say in the military, this is the last get-go. This is the last chance. This is it. Can't afford to make a mistake, and don't really care if people moan and groan and complain. That's because they don't have the world sitting on their shoulders. They haven't seen what some elected leaders have done. You know, the brave soldiers who were involved in the situation with Saddam Hussein, and how many of those good guys were shot by CIA people, Delta Force. And so when you realize the level of corruption, then you realize that you can't afford to trust people that are not part of your family. And that's the difficulty, because American citizens are saying, we want to know the truth. What's happening? Why isn't it sorted? Let's have it all fixed. And, you know, where were those people? Where were their family 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago? What's happened to the great America, the America of the 1950s, which had a completely different aspect to it? And I do urge people to go back and find those old black and white movies, well, many in color, of course, but go back and see how America is portrayed in the 50s. and then compare it with what you've got today. And don't just say, well, the technology is better. That's not what I'm getting at. I'm getting at the values of the American society. Anyway, that's
Oh
just
yeah.
what the military feel.
Yeah. I mean, if social media is an example of where millions of people's attention are, it's pretty alarming that the millions are really not doing much but just looking in the mirror and taking snapshots of themselves. And there's just, it's amazing to me the where people's mindset are when they have the choice to dig deeper and to be more soul centered. I mean, that's the where we do have free will. What are we attaching ourselves to? What are we investing in? Where is our energy going? I mean, what are your thoughts about adrenochrome not being as accessible, and celebrity world is kind of crumbling and all that is sort of dissipating? Is that true? And these are
Very much.
clones, or like, I mean, with the whole cloning thing, can you talk to us about that? I know I could keep you on all day. Look at the time,
Clones,
and I
as you, that's fine. Clones, as you know, don't use adrenochrome. It's a hybridized form of humanity that didn't want total replication, wanted to retain biological humanity, but in order to do so required a certain drug to make that happen. This really, we go on to the alien stuff, really comes from the reptilian agenda. That's something that they brought here thousands of years ago, and something that they understand very, very well. Five Wall will always tell you it's always about the children. It was the situation regarding children across the world, not just in America, that really swung it to bring the world's military, by and large, on board with the Americans. Because before the deep state clamped down, your audience might be shocked to learn that every country in the world, when it was reporting missing children, the percentage was all coming in at the same. How is that humanly possible that America would have, as proportion of the population, the same number of children missing as, say, in Great Britain? And so it meant that it was orchestrated and it was organized by a very, very clever demonic force. And it's because of what's happened to the children that the world's military, thank God, and I mean that, decided that they would no longer just be kicked in the butt. They were going to do something about it. And that's really what caused it. Of course, for things like 9/11 and the murder of a president, that very American type wake-up calls.
right. Wake up calls. I mean, you're saying to the military, especially.
Yes,
Right.
absolutely. Yeah, because it's well known that the whole point about when they put Trump in was they had to put Trump in 2016, because if he hadn't, we wouldn't be here now.
Right. Is this a part of a baton that's been sort of passed from those who came before, that were able to see the trajectory of where this was all going? I mean, that wasn't fully exposed. I mean, obviously Project Paperclip's not in our history books. People think we won the war. They're deluded in climate change and some of these agendas because they think that we're dealing with a whole different sort of political sphere than what is actually existing. So again, I mean, it's the minds that are still owned is all they can really have. And like you said, they're puffing themselves up. And is that just every last ditch effort they can to have something to feed on, because their vampiric is all, until it just dissipates and expires because the people begin to pull away and cut the cords? I know that was like a long-winded, like, what is she asking here?
Bless you. Right. Well, the White Hats have taken control of Hollywood. And so most of the films now coming out of Hollywood are being either altered by the White Hats or written. So let's have a look at Barbie film, which I haven't seen, but most of my family have. The White Hats actually wrote that from start to finish. And people would say, well, how is that possible? In terms of what do we see at the very end of the film? I don't know if you've seen it, Laura. Have you seen the Barbie film? The very end, when Barbie becomes in the human world, what does she want to do? She wants to be a woman. She wants to be a woman. She doesn't want to be a transvestite. She doesn't want to be anything else. She wants to be a woman. That's a very important message the White Hats have put. Another important message, the last James Bond film, that killed off James Bond. No more James Bond. Because a man going around killing people without reason like that is just glorifying it. So they put an end to that. The last film with Indiana Jones, and I'm answering your question now. I did go and see that, the Indiana Jones film. Don't know if you've seen it, but there's a part in there where the new Nazis, let's call them the Fourth Reich, and he gets very indignant, this bad guy, and he says, America didn't win the war, Hitler lost it. And that's so important. And the White Hats are interjecting. That's why I go and watch films now, because they're coming out. The White Hats are writing the script. And the reality of the situation is that they are beginning now to alert people to the fact that the history books, as you've said, need to be rewritten.
Wow.
And so there we are. It's out there. Unfortunately, most people just see it on one level. They just, oh, that was a good film. They don't actually ask it. But it's fairly obvious. And I remember talking to some young kids who got very indignant that when I suggested that Barbie wanted to be a woman, because they said, well, she should be what she wants to be, because they're all being rammed down their throats about transgender. And I said, she did choose what she wanted to be. She wanted to be a woman.
Oh, man.
So
yeah.
So there are signs out there that the White Hats really are in control of certain aspects, but there are sleeper cells, groups of between 3 and 12, 15 bad guys around the planet operating now independently without any control from up top, who are having to be stamped out like cockroaches. And that's taking time.
Right. So it's almost like the immune system engulfing a cancer cell, like it's gaining the upper hand, but there's still more to go. Would you say that some of these celebrities that have compromised themselves or sort of sold out or been compromised through the maybe monarch programs and cloning center, well, I guess when you're a clone, it's different, but that would change their trajectory, or that they would no longer be able to really function in something that's turning for the positive? I mean, does that help them because it seems the greater healing isn't understanding the blackmail and helping those heal that have been massively compromised. Is there a big turnaround in that, whether they come forward and say, look, this is what I went through? And because it seems, even with like Jamie Foxx or like, or just some waking up to where they might have been. I mean, I guess folks like Kathy O'Brien or others that have, stated that, and even celebrities that are, kind of calling it out. Will we probably see more of that? Or is there a way to redirect those energies and begin a healing process out of maybe having altars or being in those programs or selling out or being blackmailed? Would they have to kind of come and admit it, or the celebrities we're seeing now weren't compromised and they're able to go with the new White Hat script? You know what I'm kind of saying? Like same with the political sphere, where there's some that are like playing a particular role. They've either been compromised from the beginning and they are running altars, or they've participated in satanic ritual abuse, or they've been, like Ali Carter calls out some of the ones that she's seen in underground bases. As the script is changing, do they either come and admit like and turn around, or are they not even here anymore and we're dealing with their clones? Are they being addressed on a different level that we're not seeing, or is this something that we shouldn't even be talking about?
Oh no, we have the right, I believe, under the right amendment. Is it the First Amendment? We can talk about what we want.
Oh, I know, but I mean, I know.
I think my answer is really that anybody who's been on monarch programs or MK Ultra, in my view, is a victim. and I don't think that's fully understood by most people, and therefore I view them as a victim. I don't think they should be put through any more. I talked before that I spent my early days as a child in a place called Brighton, which was in Sussex in England, and there was a facility there. Thank the God I never went to that facility because the program that I was on was not the same as people like Orlando Bloom, because Orlando Bloom went to Brighton and he was set up to be a film star. There was another guy, Max Spears, who also went to Brighton, and he was put through that facility to become a super soldier. Fortunately, the off-planet entities that were working with me, and plus the American military, made sure that I never actually went to that facility, although I was in that same environment, shall we say. Those people are victims because they are used like the Beatles were used. They went to that facility as well to make money for the deep state, but also to see how you could affect youngsters. In 1968, 1969, think of Woodstock and the summer, they nearly broke free from the CIA mind control. So the CIA had to get in there and introduce drugs. It had to get in with agents to break it up. So their experiment nearly went wrong, because what the CIA were trying to do was say, how can we manipulate the kids? So I think we're after the organizers of it. We're after the people that create the technology for it and force it down people's throats. But most people who have been through this are victims. They need to be out of the public eye. They need to have a new name, a new change, and they need to be looked after because they are not in control of their own actions.
Yes. Yes, that is yeah, exactly kind of where I was going. I mean, the more the public understands, the less they will, just create even further division. And I mean, it needs to be understood. My labs, MK Ultra, just the trauma-based mind control, just the tactics that are being used, so there can be a much greater healing and acknowledgement of all of this, because they absolutely are victims. And the more there can be support and education to people that understand that, the more they can be helped, and not just because they're not the problem. Like you said, the organizers, the ones, behind it all.
You mentioned, excuse me, interrupting you. You mentioned Dr. Mengele, and what your audience may not know was the reason that Hitler and later the SS engaged with Mengele. I just want to turn that off. Was simply because they wanted super soldiers to be able to prevent mind reading. By the sort of the late 30s, the 38, 39, and the early 40s, Hitler had experience of off-planet entities, as indeed had the SS. And these grey aliens had the ability to read the minds of people. So Hitler actually asked Mengele, can you create a compartmentalized mind so that our agents or our special guys can't have their mind read? And that's when Mengele started to create alternate personalities inside children. And the key here is what we call the guard altar, because if you create a guard altar, it then is the gatepost for all the other subalters. And so that is why when you get a real genuine shooting in America, and unfortunately, terribly, people get killed, and then the guy goes and turns a gun on himself and kills himself because he's completely programmed to do that. And the reality, I think, is that sorry. And the reality is that when we look at this situation and we understand that for many years it's been the preserve of the CIA and the preserve of other intelligence organizations, they had no intention of allowing institutes or doctors to understand this, because then they would cure and heal their own agents, and then they would start to question it, and it would make it into the mainstream media. So it was not just about money, it was national security. It was literally about America being ahead of everyone else, because they had the ability to do this to people's minds. And then Hollywood and others got involved, not for national security, but to make money on somebody. For instance, if you have a huge corporation and you're the silent partner, you don't want to put a CEO in there who's going to destroy your corporation. So you put your CEO through these MK Ultra programs so that this individual never does anything to destroy what you've created. In Hollywood, you do it because this person will make you 50 films. They'll never say no to you. So they, as always, the corporations took this technology for purely to make money, whereas the elements within the intelligence agencies did it to keep themselves one step ahead. The problem is these are humans we're talking about. It's humans' lives that are being ruined. The number of people who have jumped to their death or shot themselves or done this, that, and the other, ordinary people would be shocked at how this mind control has actually got into the general population. And it would be shocking, because you tend to think of it in just the top echelons. It's not the case. It's widely done now. And I myself know from the work that I don't do it now because I'm working on other things. But, you know, for 10 years, that's what I did. I used to deprogram people. And, you know, it might again be shocking for your audience to know that these individuals had what we call a suicide program placed in them, so that when someone was attempting to free them, or they became self-aware, they would then self-terminate. And the only time I've ever had a real attempt on my life was when I had freed an individual, a very high-ranking individual, from that. And we were driving to the airport. This person didn't live in Britain. And there was a very serious attempt to kill both of us. And so there's a lot of money and influence and power locked up in the control of humanity.
Right.
And that's a story that very few people would want to spend time understanding without being prepared to have their lives changed. It's not like picking up a storybook and reading it and then going back to the day job. If you were to fully immerse yourself in this, it could actually completely ruin your life. And so that's why I say to people, don't wish to know too much about it unless you're prepared to change your life.
Yeah, gosh, I'm a little not worried, but I mean, I probably should put a discretion on the book I'm putting out. I mean, I know there's been a lot of books written, but I just hope I did it in a way that, I mean, it's very solution oriented, but it's pointing a lot of this out. And I know a lot has been written already. I just yeah, I hope that all goes well. Would you say the Brighton institution is similar to Tavistock, and
That's
Hitler had
correct.
something to do with
That is correct. It wasn't, it was operating as part of a hospital. It's closed now. In fact, the Tavistock Institute in London was officially closed, I think, in 2021. The White Hats actually put an end to it. But the Tavistock operated through clinics and hospitals throughout the world.
Right. Okay.
But that's exactly it in Brighton. That's exactly what it was. When I first moved there, it would be 1963, I moved to a place 12 miles away called Hove. And that was an MI5 safe house that my mother and I had. And then we were moved to when she found a job, and we were moved to she could half a mile, she could walk to the park. And that was her cover. So, you know, as a single parent back in 1966, 67, it was very, very difficult. So when they offered her to work for the Secret Intelligence Services and said, you get two wages. And I just laughed to this day because, you know, she would get a guy would turn up and give her money. And then every Friday she would walk across Preston Park to the office, and she'd just go in and sign her name and given a little pay packet. She didn't work there, but she got two wages. And that was the cover, the front, that she was supposed to work in this office. She never did. She worked at home doing all the secret stuff. And, for me, I never questioned it because that's what I grew up in. But now, of course, I look back and I realized that there was a bigger game even going on. The only time, Laura, I was ever asked to leave a room was when my mother signed the Official Secrets Act. You don't quite have the same in America, but the law says in Britain that only person who can be present during the signing of the Official Secrets Act is the agent who's gone there and the person they've chosen. And I lived in a very old Victorian house built in about 1895, and the keyhole was really big, and I could actually look through the keyhole, and I watched my mother sign the Official Secrets Act.
Oh my
So,
goodness.
yeah, so hilarious, really, as we say, because every other time these conversations were held in front of me. Now I realized that was all part of their operation. It was part of their plan. My mother would literally do her work, Laura, Saturday, Sunday. She'd go to the kitchen to have her food, and she'd leave her work out. I'm not at school on Saturday, Sunday, so I'd sit for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, just read everything she was doing. And this is done deliberately, I'm sure of it. Because when a guy would come in and start talking to her, I was never asked, oh, go outside, go in the garden, go leave us. So they'd have discussions. And I was party to that. Things that are like incredibly interesting. But now I look back on it and I realize that the American military intelligence, not the CIA or the FBI or the NRO or any of that, it was the military intelligence had a great interest in me, even right back then. And so I was exposed, shall we say, to all of this in a way that was very matter of fact. And it wasn't made as a big deal. It was just a conversation. And, I remember one time I had like little goldfish. I don't know what you call them in America, little fish in tanks. And I remember I was cleaning out the tank and this guy, Paul, turned up. Huge conversation about aliens and smashed spacecraft. And there I was just quietly cleaning out my tank with my fish. Hilarious, bizarre looking back on it now. But there was obviously a much bigger agenda about me.
Wow. And knowing what you were exposed to and just the larger picture of what you're here to do.
Well, I can't believe that the American military don't know what's going on in the world. And I think that after the Second World War, they made a big effort, excuse me, to really know what was going on. And they would have families, intelligence families who were CIA, of course, or any of them, and then would work with those families for either experimentation. One person who came to be my American coordinator. She was very successful. She was a coordinator for a while, but there was a huge hoo-ha, and I got a phone call from in the United States Navy Intel saying, you can't have this person, you can't have this person, you can't have her as your American coordinator. So, well, why the heck not? And they said, because when she was 7 years old, she was taken to a CIA school and taught to levitate objects. And I said, well, why is that a problem? I said, well, because there could be a program in there which can activate and could cause you damage. So they've obviously had a great interest in me. And I have recollections, we won't talk about it now because it's not really the topic, I don't suppose, but I have recollections of humans and aliens literally in the same room. Why do doctors and professors always wear white coats? It is beyond me. But I do remember, the audience will find this interesting, I think they'll smile, that in the chair that I was sitting, everything to the left was alien technology, and everything to the right was human technology. And we're talking 1971, so we're talking IBM mainframes. And I can remember the heat from these machines, and they got fans going and a heat from them. and the cabling laid out all over the room. The cables was as thick as an elephant's trunk. But on this side, there's no cabling, there's no heat, there's not actually that many lights flashing, but it's just these consoles, these technology, and you've got the aliens on one side and the humans on the other. And that was 1971. And
Wow.
so I know that when people do come out and they write books or they talk about their experiences, I don't laugh at them, because I say, you know what, that's probably true, because I've experienced that, and I've seen what they're capable of doing. And humans and aliens do on occasion work together.
Yeah. Wow. What I could just I know we've might, probably need to close. What was the point in which you really, stepped into the work you're doing today? Because I mean, the service to humanity and the resource that you represent for the world is just so immense, and just so much gratitude to you. Like,
Thank you.
yeah, it's always
Thank
amazing
you.
to talk to you.
Thank you.
When you said it was more public around 2009, but
Yeah.
when were you sort of processing into this
2015.
2015? What?
2015, because I was contacted by what at the time would be called a Red Dragon. We would just refer to them as the Chinese elders now. And the guy, through someone else, did a Skype call, and he said, "You just want to let you know that we've been looking at you, the Chinese elders, and we really like what you're doing. And there's a big RV coming, a big revaluation coming, and we want you to be involved in that." And then he gave me a few pointers, and then I understood really widely how the RV related to the assassination of President Kennedy, how it related to the Twin Towers, how it related right back to the Q movement. And then I thought, what I've got to do is I've got to build a strong network, particularly in America, because I knew that the COVID was going to hit, and I was on telling everyone, not just the prepper group, but get water, food. This is in 2017, 2018, 2019, get food in, etc. Not because there's going to be an earthquake, but because your supermarkets are going to close and you're going to run out of this, that, and the other. So I created in America a very strong network of coordinators, administrators, to work with all the states and all of my members in the states to provide that platform during lockdown. And that's what I did there. We had a different format for the rest of the world. Not hugely different, but it was different. So 2015 was when I decided that what we had to create was a spiritual organization that would take anybody who was good. I don't care whether you're Jewish, whether you're Muslim. I don't care. I don't care what the color of your skin is. I don't care what job you do. If you're a good person, and what I mean by that is you want the best for humanity, then why don't you join? And the number of people who said to me, "But you don't charge. There's no membership fee." And I said, "No, because that will corrupt spirituality. If you're paying for spirituality, I'm not having it." And so what the White Hats did, and I don't know why I should tell you this, but I will anyway. The White Hats said, we've got to get him sorted, we've got to help him out. So they put me in connection with a few people who said, we'll help you monetize your organization, Simon. You can make $1 million, you'll be a millionaire in a year. And they said, we'll do it all for you. And I said, no, thank you. No, I'm not going to do it, because it's my principle that people want to give me a donation, it's absolutely fine. That's a donation, and I'll accept that humbly. But I am not going to say to somebody, you can join my club and you've got to give me $10 a month or what have you, because it just doesn't fit with what I believe in. So when the White Hats got that, then they realized that that wasn't the road I was going to go down. So we're having an interesting relationship with them. I hope they respect my position. Heck, they probably know me better than most other people on the planet. If I've been, of interest to them, since before 1971, then I'm sure that they have a clue on me. So how it's working out now, I know you want to bring it to a close because you're getting tired.
No, I never get tired talking to you. Anyway.
Bless you. Is that, they have said that they will support my organization, Connecting Consciousness, and how they will support it is in the following ways. At the moment, we're voluntary, but we will be the only spiritual non-profit organization that will pay wages to staff. In other words, we have coordinators in all countries of the world nearly now, and they will actually receive a wage. They're going to have a 10-year contract, and they are going to be paid better than average wage to carry on doing the job they're doing. We're going to have our members who could be project managers. They're going to be paid to project manage a number of our projects. And lots of our members have written in with great ideas for humanitarian projects. Those that are successful will be funded. Those individuals will get a wage. So that's what makes us different, is that I have held this organization to a railroad line that I would not deviate from, because I was committed to it from a very early age, in the sense that, like many of us, I have a very strong idea of right and wrong, and I won't be corrupted. And I think, I have tried to retire. And I did say to the White Hats, could we negotiate some sort of retirement? And they said, absolutely not. They said, if you walk away from this, we're not funding it. You've got to stay there for 10 years. And they said, don't worry about it. You go on a med bed, and then you can come back and do another 25 years after that. And they weren't joking. So I'm just blessed that this organization that I represent has been earmarked to do good on the earth, to bring health and happiness and prosperity to the human race. And God knows, and I mean that nicely, God knows we need it, because we've been under the thumb of the bad guys for so long. It's about time we demonstrated what good things are, good humanitarian projects, and how they can impact not just ourselves, but our families and our children's and our grandchildren, and change the values of society. No good in putting a wonderful humanitarian project out there if it's not understood. If the values of humanity are, the entertainment industry, like you said earlier, I must go and get another pair of red high heel shoes, or I must go and get the latest phone. And that's more important than saving lives. That's more important than caring about our fellow neighbors. No, humanity is really important. And so what I want to do is drive through projects that show the best of people and give people the best opportunity to be what they always wanted to be, but the system never allowed them to do that. And that's my job. That's partly why I came here. And I'll finish off by saying, people often say to me, and I had this a lot from genuine UFO researchers who go onto television and they say, I researched this and I researched that. And, I'm not sure if it's true, but I research it. Off camera, they all know it's true. They're too terrified to be honest and say, I believe it, because they feel that in the mainstream matrix, their credibility will be destroyed. But they have come to me, many of them, privately, and said, can you please arrange for me to have a meeting with an off-planet entity? And I've said to them, you must be joking. I said, in the first instance, you don't go to them, they come to you. And if they don't come to you, they're never going to do it. So it's, they call you. Secondly, do you really want your life changed, turned upside down? I said, that's why they come to kids. Because if you go to a kid that's 6 months old, by the time it's 11 or 12, it knows no different. But if you go to an adult who's created in the matrix with that mindset, and then you show them this new world, they will not cope with it, or 99% of them won't cope with it. That's why they work with children. And I've said to people, as a sort of a copy of this, if I take a 50-year-old guy and for the first time in his life and put him on an aeroplane and fly him to Los Angeles, he'll be like that, perhaps. If you take a 6-month-old baby and put it on an aeroplane, by the time that kid's 12, it knows no different. It's normal to it. It's conditioning. So be careful what you wish for. And, you know, the things I have seen, the things I've experienced, some of it I wouldn't want to share with people, because why would I want to change their paradigm?
Do you think it's okay I'm putting this book out then? I mean,
I would, you've asked me, I would suggest, purely about, you talk about altars and you've talked about that, I think I would put a warning somewhere in the book saying that if you believe that you have been a victim of MK Ultra, please avoid such a chapter, because this may trigger you, it may activate you, and you want to put helpline, a support line there for people who are trying to understand or trying to break free, and they read your book and it starts to activate them. Well, they could have a suicide program and they'll be dead in 2 weeks. So you need to have a go-to place that understands that and can deactivate it.
Right.
You know, that's the only thing I would say.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant and good advice. I don't dive too deep into it. I reference it. I just pointed out for people to consider. It's called Awakening the Truth Frequency, and it's about being true to you and honoring where you are on your soul path, and that there's no real right or wrong.
That's not a program. I mean, the number of people who, you know, when I used to do this, let me just, before you go, I do tend to not get tired on this topic because it's what I came here to do. But under Obama, there was a British pop group, okay, and the guy was called Adam and the Ants. Adam and the Ants, and it was in like 1979, 1980. And he made some really strong, powerful videos. And in those days, the individual would go to Hollywood and say, hey, I want to do a video to go with my #1 hit single in Britain, and this is what I want to do. And they'd say, fine. Sounds incredible now, because now it's the other way around. Hollywood says, you'll do this, you'll stand here, you'll move your hand like this, you'll do that. But back in those days, the artiste could actually dictate what he or she wanted. Now, he had been through MK Ultra, and what he wanted to do was to share his breaking out process through 3 videos with his hit music. And Obama, under Obama's presidency, although it was on YouTube and it was a standard, blocked it. I used it as part of my deprogramming. There's three ones he did, Adam and his Ants, and I used it when I was working with people to deprogram them. And it got so bad under Obama that I used to have a backup copy, because you couldn't get it in America. You could not get it on YouTube anywhere, and show it. When Trump came in, literally overnight, poof, all cut off, taken away, you could get it. And I was really very honored when Adam and his Ants, who's still going, his manager did a Skype with me, and he said to me, there's his own manager, he said, I just want you to know, we know what you're doing with his music. We're really grateful. We can't publicly say anything or do anything, but we know what you're doing and we've got our support. 2 weeks later, Adam Ant's lead drummer did a Skype with me. He came on. He said, I just want to thank you for using Adam's story through his music to help people to deprogram. So, you know, that's the sort of life that I've been in. And I feel that, you know, there's more to do, more good work to do, and you need backing, and that's why the White Hats are backing me, basically.
Incredible. Wow, Simon, this has been so informative, and really, I appreciate so much of what you've shared. And I know the audience is going to be wowed. It's always such a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope we can do more.
You're the person that I've always respected, because apart from perhaps 1 or 2 other people, Laura, you're the only person who fully understood Operation Paperclip. You're the only person who's got the whole picture, and that's why I respect you, because you just know through your family connections and also your own work. And most people who profess to being researchers don't actually know anything about Paperclip. You do.
Yes. Wow. I hope we can do this again, Simon.
If your audience like it, then we'll do it. If the audience are bored, we won't do it.
Oh, I'm not bored. I hope I'm a big enough audience.
Bless you. Okay, listen, God bless.
God
God
bless.
bless to you. Send me the link. I'll put it on my, it doesn't go out to YouTube because I'm thrown off YouTube.
Me too.
I put it on my, yeah, I'll put it on my own internal MeWe Pro so that only my members can watch it. So send me the link. Listen, lots of love to you. You do a great job. And one day, either we'll meet in the UK or we'll meet in America, but we'll meet some point.
I can't wait. Wow. Thank you so much, Simon. See you soon.
God
Bye.
bless.
God bless.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.